Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
We wanted to make sure that there was an idea of hope.
This is what makes it so enjoyable to be in Missouri in the fall.
Whoa, look at this bee. There's something cool is going on here.
Today on Spotlight. In 1916, St. Louis children pooled their pennies to buy the St. Louis Zoo its very first elephant. Plus, a Webster University program creates a real buzz as a rare parasitic bumblebee sighting is documented in Belleville. And then she's shining a spotlight on her struggles with her new book, Black Girls in White Coats. But first, an opera written by a man that most know as the King of Ragtime. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight. In celebration of World Opera Day on October 25th, we're taking a look back at two of Opera Theater's performances from this past season, starting with the world premiere of a new expanded version of Scott Joplin's landmark opera, Treemonisha.
Treemonisha is an opera that focuses on a story about a woman Treemonisha is an opera that deals with the themes of family, community, education, and leadership. It's known as the first opera, especially in the North American continent, composed by an African American creative.
That would be composer Scott Joplin. Even though Joplin was considered the king of ragtime, he didn't refer to himself as such. Joplin considered his music to encompass a wide range of musical style. Treemonisha was written at the turn of the 20th century, but the opera's setting is after the Reconstruction era. Joplin synthesized his musical ideas into a conventional three-act opera. He scored it, wrote the libretto, and choreographed it.
Joplin had a mind to set this opera during the Reconstruction era, when America was trying to reconstruct itself from the South and the North. Even now, we're constantly reconstructing ourselves, as we should as people.
Joplin dreamed of combining Western and African musical traditions, a work that would announce to white America that black music had come of age. With Treemonisha, he felt that goal was within his grasp.
What better way to do it with music? Music is a universal language. It unifies us. It brings us together. No matter where you're from, what language you speak, no matter whether you are educated or whether you're not educated in music.
Sneed reimagined Joplin's work in an expanded version of Treemonisha.
Joplin wrote 3 acts, and those acts, 1, 2, and 3, have now become 2, 3, and 4. My collaborative partner, Karen Chilton, the librettist, she and I decided to come together and create a story that would take the viewer, the listener, into the mind and the world of Scott Joplin himself. In addition to that, I took Joplin's music and I reorchestrated it. So it's not just bookends, so to speak, that we placed in front and at the end of Joplin's opera, but now it is a new work.
Sneed adds 2 new characters, Freddie Alexander and the maestro himself, Scott Joplin. Alexander was actually Joplin's second wife. They were married on June 14, 1904. However, she tragically died 10 weeks later from pneumonia. Sneed says his version of Treemonisha is futuristic, something everyone can find relatable.
Sometimes, because of what we watch on television, because of what we hear, what we read, we also can formulate in our minds how things should be. But we wanted to make sure that there was an idea of hope, an idea of futuristic possibility. That's what Joplin did in his era, And now with technological innovation and all of the wonderful things that we're learning from things in history being uncovered, we decided to set this opera in the same place with more of a forward impetus of the possibility of the future.
During Joplin's lifetime, Treemonisha had only one semi-public piano performance. He became tormented over its success. Sadly, in his early 40s, Joplin suffered a nervous breakdown due to neurosyphilis and collapsed in 1911.
We have never really had an opportunity to see how Scott Joplin imagined his opera, because he never had an opportunity to see his opera performed before he passed.
Joplin died in 1917. It wasn't until 1972, 55 years later, when Treemonisha was fully produced on the Houston Grand Opera stage. It was the first of many opera performances held across the country.
So all of these things now come into play with our expression of Scott Joplin's Treemonisha in this new adaptation through Opera Theater of St. Louis.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis. In 1916, St. Louis children pooled their pennies to buy the St. Louis Zoo its very first elephant. Public historian Adam Kloppe tells us how much they raised and what they received for their contributions.
For many St. Louisans, a summer really isn't complete without a visit to the St. Louis Zoo to visit one of the 18,000 plus animals that they have there, that they care for, and there's so many animals that people connect with, penguins and lions and hippos and rhinos and all sorts of animals, but the favorite of so many people is the elephants, right? And the St. Louis Zoo is home to 9 elephants today, and they take such fantastic care of those elephants. But there's a history to elephants at the St. Louis Zoo that a lot of us don't think about. So the St. Louis Zoo dates its history back to 1910. That's when the St. Louis Zoological Society was formed. And over the next several years, they were in Forest Park, they were adding new facilities, getting everything ready for different animals to be brought in. And in 1916, they had things set up to bring in the zoo's first elephant. In order to do this, they wanted to raise some funds so they could purchase an elephant from a circus. And so they reached out to St. Louis City school children and asked them to donate pennies to a fund so that the zoo could buy its very first elephant. And these children really responded. They raised over $2,300 in pennies. That'd be over $50,000 today. It's a lot of money. And the zoo used that money to purchase their first elephant. And they had already said that because they had worked with the schools to get those children to donate the money, that the first elephant would be named after the school board president, a guy by the name of James Harper. And they were going to call the elephant Jim. And they purchased their first elephant, and it's a female. But everyone had already fallen in love with the name Jim, so they decide they're gonna call this elephant Miss Jim. And Miss Jim arrives in April of 1916. And thousands of people show up in Forest Park the day she arrives to watch her parade through Forest Park. And the school children are really excited. There's reports in the newspapers that they're all pointing at the elephant saying, oh, my pennies bought part of the trunk, or my pennies bought her tail, or whatever it is. They just really connected to this elephant instantly. And they continued to connect with this elephant over the years. Back then, people could go on rides on the elephant at the St. Louis Zoo. So kids would show up to the zoo and they would go for rides on Miss Jim's back. It's estimated that she gave over 300,000 people rides between 1960 and when she was retired from giving rides in the 1940s when she got a little bit older. And, when she passed away later in the 1940s, thousands of people in St. Louis were in mourning. They had really connected with this animal and connected with, the conservation efforts and the animal care that were provided at a place like the zoo. So without Miss Jim, the history of elephants at the St. Louis Zoo would look completely different. And, we really need to study her history so that we can understand the history of the institutions that we love so much today.
Next week on History Spotlight, learn about how a growing St. Louis forced the city to relocate existing cemeteries.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
Ned Siegel observes the activity in the garden he created. It purposefully has a variety of mostly native plants and flowers. They attract bees.
There are thousands of native bees.
He documents the little visitors by taking photos and some videos. Ned uploads the photos to a research-based program called the Shutterbee Citizen Science Program. Shutterbee uses the iNaturalist app to identify bees in the St. Louis metropolitan area. Ned is a trained citizen scientist in the Shutterbee project. The retired biochemist is a master gardener and naturalist.
I actually have a degree in botany, so I always was interested in plants.
So being part of the Shutterbee surveys was a natural next step for Ned and his home garden in Belleville, Illinois.
I do that approximately every 2 weeks. So a 30-minute walk taking pictures of bees, I'll just have probably hundreds of pictures sometimes.
Then one morning in late July, the walk was like any other until he photographed this bumblebee. He uploaded the photos to the Shutterbee project on the iNaturalist app. Then,
boom, 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 boom. All the experts saying, wait a minute, this is a rare bee.
It's a lemon cuckoo bee.
Photographed the lemon cuckoo bee, which is a rare bee found in Missouri, and it hasn't been found in the St. Louis metropolitan area since the 1800s, 1854.
That's 7 years before the Civil War.
It has been documented in southern Illinois and in northern Illinois more recently.
Nicole Miller-Strutman is the co-creator of Shutterbee.
And I'm the Browning Chair of Biology at Webster University. This bee is a parasitic bee. It's a cuckoo bee, kind of like a cuckoo bird. It lays its larvae in the nests of other bees, so it doesn't actually care for its young. It lets other bees do that. So that's sort of a unique natural history, or lifestyle, if you will, that requires a high population of other kinds of bees. So in order to find parasitic bees, you have to have enough of their host bees.
In the moments the rare parasitic bumblebee was being identified, the Shutterbee team was buzzing with excitement.
My co-creator, Nina Fogel, sent me a message with a bee with just these big googly eyes that was just like, whoa, look at this bee. There's something cool is going on here. Then it was verified by myself as well as several other specialists. So what this finding, or one of the things that this finding demonstrates, is that at least in the region where Ned collected, that there's a high enough abundance of other bees that this rare cuckoo bee can persist. Now, why we haven't seen that bee since 1854, part of that is how much were we searching for it, right? So you always have to, acknowledge that maybe we weren't looking that hard for it.
Shutterbee is meant to be that busy bee that's all about bees.
So we've been doing this project for about 4 years. We got some really interesting results that demonstrate that, what you do locally actually really matters. St. Louis has a historically high bee diversity, in part because of our unique sort of ecological placement. We have lots of different habitats in a close area, and that influences what bees are found in the city.
She says this rare sighting is important when studying bees and climate change.
Species are shifting as it gets warmer. They're moving towards the poles. So it's exciting to see this bee, who's at the southern edge of its range, still persisting here. That is a good thing because it's implying that, they're able to, at least so far, survive despite warming. All we know is that we found this bee, and it's still hanging on.
And now with the latest buzz happening here, maybe more people will become a citizen scientist like Ned.
I don't know why I saw the lemon cuckoo bumblebee when I did. The plant that she was feeding upon, our native purple coneflower, a lot of the bees use that plant.
He's been looking for that lemon cuckoo bee ever since.
I haven't seen it. No, and I haven't seen it since. I was lucky, but I carry my phone with me anytime I'm out here putzing in the garden, thinking maybe I'll see her again.
Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, definitely a lot more than I expected.
Dr. Jovita Owurwari, or Dr. O as she is often referred to, is an oncologic breast surgeon who released her first book. It is called Black Girls in White Coats. In it, a total of 60 African American female doctors, including herself, are highlighted for their work.
I don't know that you ever overcome it. You just learn to deal with it. Again, because there are so many people that want to make you feel less than.
Dr. O says she wanted to shine a spotlight on the struggles that she and many of her colleagues have faced over the years. But beyond that, it was a way to pay tribute to their love of medicine and to offer encouragement to the next generation.
What you're doing is really phenomenal, and I really hope that you keep doing it. One, she needs to know that she's doing something very powerful. I go to Ponce Health Sciences University. It's her second year as a branch here in St. Louis. Right now I'm in their Master's of Medical Science program, and they also have a 4-year MD program that I am going to be applying for as well.
I think that is probably one of the reasons why this book came into fruition, just because I know that we are not visible. It's not a visible field. So it's not an easy field. It's hard. Lots of years of schooling, debt, etc.
Originally from the East Coast, Dr. O came to St. Louis about 20 years ago. She currently works at SSM DePaul Hospital.
Part of why I chose this field is that it's not a one and done like a lot of general surgery is. General surgery, you do an appendectomy, you do a gallbladder, you take care of the patient, and you never see them again. With breast cancer, you continue to see them. The minimum time span that we see our cancer patients is 5 years.
Dr. O, that's my doctor. She's my surgeon. I was the breast cancer survivor 8 years now, and she was one of my surgeons. So when I saw it was her, I had to come out and support and get a book.
I look at her as a mentor myself, even though I am a 2-time survivor before the age of 40. And Dr. Abita was the first one who I met when I was diagnosed. So I have followed her ever since. She is doing an amazing job with Black women, white women. She's just very personable. So that's what I really like about her.
There are women who are going through a breast cancer diagnosis and treatment, and we connect on the level of being women. And you develop a rapport over that length of time because you get to share and celebrate their life milestones with them, kids getting married, having grandbabies.
Whether it is her colleagues, her patients, or those that she mentors, Dr. O seems to leave a lasting impression. She says it is because she lets other women know that they are seen, they are heard, and they matter.
One of the most popular operas, later on Spotlight.
When visitors come into my studio and see my collection of dried leaves, I often tell them that I've never seen a fall leaf that I didn't love. My name is Jody Williams. I'm a botanical artist here at the Foundry Art Center in St. Charles, Missouri. I currently have a solo exhibition entitled Missouri's Autumn Treasures. It includes botanical paintings in watercolor of leaves, fall fruit, and trees that grow in Missouri. I love the fall. It's one of my favorite times of the year here in Missouri. The humidity goes down, the temperatures go down, and the color and the variety of plant life is just amazing. So it's just a fantastic time to be out of doors, observing plant life, collecting specimens, and then turning those into artwork. Many people wonder what botanical art is. One of its main characteristics is it's representational. So it's a painting of an actual plant specimen that I look at and observe as I prepare to draw and paint the subject. So sometimes I take measurements, sometimes I look at a leaf from all different perspectives, and decide how to not only represent the plant life accurately, but in an artistic and aesthetically pleasing way. One of the special parts of the exhibition is the wall with all the pumpkins and gourds. The year I moved into the studio was a bumper crop for pumpkins and gourds, and so I spent most of the winter painting all different beautiful varieties, and that's one of the things that makes fall in Missouri special. The concept of using pumpkins and gourds as decoration is really an American and a Midwestern practice. The Europeans had never seen the enthusiasm and passion that Midwesterners have for growing and displaying all these varieties of fall fruits. And this is what makes it so enjoyable to be in Missouri in the fall, to enjoy the plants, enjoy the leaves changing color, and enjoying the fruits of our harvest. So I hope you come and visit Missouri's Autumn Treasures here at the Foundry Art Center. It runs through October 28th.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org. It is one of the most popular American operas ever written, and yet Susannah has never been performed at Opera Theater of St. Louis until now.
It is the second most performed American opera after Porgy and Bess, but that doesn't mean it's performed a lot. There aren't a lot of recordings, there aren't a lot of productions of it out there, and I think that's a shame because I think it's an absolute American treasure.
It is also a cautionary tale. Susannah is set in Appalachia and is the story of a young woman vilified after being spotted in a creek near her home bathing.
Exposing herself in play, to see.
Then, at the community church, where gossip is treated as breaking news, the blue-nosed locals, egged on by a shade tree preacher, immediately judge Susannah as a sinner and shun her. When the preacher later visits Susannah, demanding she confess her sin, he commits his own by raping her. And it only gets worse from there. For such a heavy story, the score is occasionally made lighter through its folksy sensibilities.
It's fun, you know. I think we see Susannah as being quite a dark opera, but there's also at least two that I can think of on the top of my head, really fun numbers. One's the Jaybird, and it makes me smile every single time I hear it.
Gemma New, who is conducting the production, is not new to St. Louisans or to the pit musicians from the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. From 2016 to 2020, she was the SLSO's resident conductor.
Where's a good place to pick it up?
Directing the opera is Patricia Rissette, who sung the role of Susannah as a college student and later as an acclaimed professional with the San Francisco Opera. She also personally knew Carlisle Floyd, who composed it. The teaming of Rissette and New marks only the second time in the history of Opera Theater of St. Louis when the director and conductor of a single production have both been women.
It's awesome working with Patricia. She's amazing, and she knows this opera inside and out.
I would not presume to say that if a male were directing it, it would have any less sensitivity. That would be sexist on my part. But I think we bring to the table certain specificities and strengths in telling a story.
I don't know if this is the first time that Susannah has been directed and conducted by women leaders. I think it's important. Female-led teams in opera are still way too uncommon.
Welcome here.
While there is no particular reason Susannah had not been produced by Opera Theater before, There is a very particular reason why it is being done now.
Phyllis Brissenden was a founding supporter of the company, and she leaned across the table and she looked at me and she said, "What operas are you going to subject us to across the next couple of years?" One of the operas I named was Carlisle Floyd's Susannah, and Phyllis said, "Well, I hope you'll do it, and I hope you'll do it soon. It's an opera I've never seen and always thought that would be great at Opera Theater of St. Louis."
And ask the Lord for forgiveness.
Opera Theater first announced it would produce Susannah as part of its 2020 season. But of course, there was no 2020 season because of the pandemic. And as fate would have it, Phyllis Brissenden never got to see her request fulfilled. She died just a few months before the 2020 season was set to begin. In her will, she left Opera Theater $45 million, enough money for the company to keep all its employees paid through the shutdown and then some. This season's production of Susannah is dedicated to her memory.
You know what days wait her.
The composer of Susannah said the story should be considered set in the present.
Have you no sense of decency, sir?
When it debuted in 1955, it was seen as a commentary on McCarthyism. Today, it seems there are plenty of other isms to which Susannah's themes of hypocrisy and mob mentality can be considered a warning.
It's a very complicated message. These characters are not just one facet of, human emotion. They have a lot of layers.
It's an outrage. It's a blasphemous outrage.
I think it is, unfortunately, still telling a story that is going on around us in our world, in our society. That story of narrow-mindedness, dogmatic thinking, intolerance. And it is, it's still very relevant.
I hope that audiences will go home and not say, wow, they hit us over the head with this lesson about what's true today, but that people may be inspired to wake up the next morning after the opera and to talk with someone about how this opera is helping them think differently, about those fundamental human themes of compassion, of understanding, and of not being swept away by the mob.
Next week, we celebrate Halloween. Alton, Illinois is believed to be home to one of the most restless spirits. Plus, building realistic body parts for medical training at Mizzou. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.